What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? BizzyDad here, you there, and thanks for stopping by today and checking out this video, which is a profile for the deck I like to call Vlad Solo. This is a mono black, no resonator deck, and since this is my first deck profile on this channel, I just want to go over a couple things. First of all, I'm not trying to rip off or plagiarize or copy anybody that has this deck already out there or in existence. So if this is something close to what you've built or something you've seen played or on another channel or on another list, I'm sorry. Chances are I did not know that. And really also what I like to do is build fun decks. There are a lot of great places where you can go here on YouTube or the internet and just find decks that give you the best cards possible, and you can just tear people up if you have the cards. What I like to do is build fun decks with interesting cards you might not see a whole lot of or might not think about putting in, but they actually combo really well. This is my favorite deck to play at the moment, just not having any resonators and really just messing with your opponent. This is a reactionary deck. This deck wants to go long. It wants the game to go long. It wants your opponent to make mistakes and then eventually not know what to do. So let's just go into it. Our ruler is Vlad Tepes. All rulers can J activate and flip over. I will say that I have never flipped Vlad over. I have never played anybody who has Vlad and flipped her over too. So really, she is the main win condition of the deck. The reason why it's called Vlad Solo is she is alone. She does not have any other resonators in the main deck. However, we can get to them, and we'll go over that in a minute. So Vlad's main ability costs 2. This card deals 200 damage to target opponent, and you gain 200 life. This is the main way to beat your opponent as the game goes on. Keep hitting them for 200, 200, 200. As you have more stones available, it becomes 400, then 600, then 800, and finally they just run out of life. So that is our main condition, just wanting the game to go long and really just draining your opponent with Vlad as we go along. Let's move into the stone lineup. We run 14 mono darkness stones. Again, it's a mono dark deck. 10 is usually the standard, but we like to have 14 just in case we run into the mirror match against another Vlad. We like to have more stones. Also, since this deck does like to go long, there have been a couple of times where I've gotten up to 10 or 11 stones on the board. So it's nice to have more than your opponent, and the more stones available, the more times you can hit somebody for 200. It really comes in handy, and again, the longer the game goes, the worse it's going to be. So, moving into the resonator lineup, we have none. There are no resonators in this deck. Let's go on to our Regalia package. I run 3 Deathscythes, and the main reason why I do this is to prevent your opponent's J-Ruler from getting swiftness and imperishable. That's really important. You don't want your opponent flipping over early and being able to hit you right away if they have a Levitine, or if they have a ruler like Sylvia, which gets swiftness off the bat. This takes away that, and it also takes away imperishable, which is great because we do have cards in this deck that do kill J-rulers, and if you can get the Deathscythe on the board and you can get the cards in play to kill them, they're gone. They're not coming back, and they can't get imperishable. So really good card. Again, a lot of these cards are defense and reactionary. I also run 3 Artemis Bows, again, just defense. You put the bow on, it gets 2 counters. You can hit a blocking or attacking J resonator for 400 damage. This also pops additions, and it's really a deterrent. Your opponent might not want to attack if they see the bow is active with counters on it. And it also combos with some of our other cards in the deck. The other 34 cards in this deck are all spells and additions, so we'll get into that. We're going to play 3 Scorn of Dark Alice. This is a great first move card if you can have it. You get to look at your opponent's hand, pick a resonator, and they discard it. So really good off the bat. Turn 1, Scorn of Dark Alice. Let me see your hand, and you can basically kill their turn 1 play, kill their turn 2 play. But really what's important is you get to see what's in their hand. So that's just information right off the bat. Always useful to see, even mid-game or late game, if they have a lot of cards and maybe you could see something they're about to set up or put together. We play 4 Unseen Pressure. This is a 1-drop instant, and it destroys target resonator with 400 or less attack. It's pretty straightforward. It clears Elvish Priests. It'll clear any little 1 or 2 drops early on, but it also has some use mid to late game with comboing with other cards, which we're about to see. For Black Ribbon, this is a pretty underrated card, and I don't see anybody else use this. So this is a Resonator edition. You would put this card on one of your opponent's Resonators, and it's a constant -2/-2. So this is really good if you're playing against the Lancelot and slap this on him, and it's kind of tougher for them to get the boost to 1,000 attack, and then Lancelot really starts causing trouble. So it's a constant -2/-2 to what Resonator you put it on. But the real beauty of it is you can banish it to give another Resonator -4/-4 for the turn. So if your opponent has a 8/8 on the board, you could banish this off the Resonator it's currently on and drop their attack down to 400, and now all of a sudden Unseen Pressure kills it. This is how the deck likes to work together. They combo, they react. It's very situational, so you want to see what your opponent has on the board and then just react to it. It's also good to just negate them and just give them negative stats, so you're not taking as much damage when you do get hit. For Stoning to Death, this is a staple in pretty much every dark deck. The majority of dark decks will run Stoning to Death. 2-drop instant, destroy target Resonator. No questions asked. You know, as long as it can't be canceled, or as long as the Resonator doesn't have a protection or addition on it, this just wipes it out. You can wait for your opponent to play a Resonator and play it and then destroy them. Always good to have in hand, and especially this deck, which will, as the game goes on, you'll have more stones up. Again, just real good to have access to just a kill spell just like that. 4 copies of Death Sentence from the Queen. This is a great card, and not a lot of people will expect this. This is a spell chance standby. So when you play it, you put it face down in your chance standby area. It costs 2, and you wait for the trigger to hit. The trigger in this case is while a Resonator your opponent controls is attacking. And the result is your opponent banishes a non-attacking Resonator. You gain life equal to the defense. So this is really good. You put this down in your chance standby area. A lot of times people don't see this coming and they don't expect it. So you wait for them to have 2 Resonators on the board. Usually they'll attack with the weaker one, especially if a stronger one just came into play that turn. You wait for them to declare the attack. You hit Death Sentence from the Queen. They have to banish the larger Resonator or a Resonator that's not attacking, and you gain life equal to its defense. That's really good. Also, if you have a way to answer the original attack, whether it be a stoning or an unseen pressure, you'll be able to kill the attacking Resonator, take the life equal to the defense of the banished Resonator, and now your opponent has nothing on the board. Really frustrating card. They don't expect it at first, and when they eventually do see it, what's great is for the rest of the game, every time you put a chance standby card down, they're going to think of this. It's going to make them think twice about how they attack and when they attack. Really good. Reactionary. Get in their heads. Make them think twice about what they're going to do. 4 copies of Dark Purge. Guys, one of the best dark cards in the game is Dark Purge. A 2-drop instant. Target J Resonator gets -6/-6 until end of turn. Key here is J Resonator. You can go after opponent's J rulers with this card, and because it's an instant, it can happen at any time. I've been lucky enough on a few occasions to have 2 of these in my hand after my opponent J activates. You wait for them to play their stones to J activate and flip their J ruler over. Dark Purge, Dark Purge. Hit them with a double Dark Purge. If they don't have any way to cancel it or prevent the damage, their J ruler is gone. And it's even better when you have the Deathscythe on the board too. They are gone and they are not coming back. It's a great way to just kill momentum. It's really a gut punch when they finally get enough stones or enough triggers to J activate and they just get hit with the Dark Purge. This also can work with the bow as well. If a J Resonator or one of their J rulers attacks, you can hit them with the Dark Purge, tap the bow, hit them for another 400. If they have 1,000, that does kill them. So Dark Purge is great. It's one of the main killers in this game. Really good card. And now, which is probably my favorite dark card in the entire game, excuse me, is the Yellow Sign. This is amazing. Again, excuse me, another card that I don't see anybody else play. And when I do play it, it surprises a lot of people. This is an addition resonator, just like the black ribbon, except it negates the opponent's resonator -3, -3. That's continuous. So -3, -3, as long as this is on the resonator. But the beauty of this card is at the end of turn, this card deals 300 damage to added resonator's controller. Now, end of turn means every single time the turn passes, this card's going to deal 300 damage to your opponent. At the end of your turn, at the end of their turn, each time it's 300, 300, 300. They're going to need to respond. They're going to need to get this off their resonator immediately. And if you play somebody who doesn't necessarily have an answer, something to destroy an addition, or Guinevere that could banish cards, or playing Cthulhu's that can incarnate, and you can get this to stick for a few turns, your opponent is going to have no choice but to use their own resources to kill their own resonators to get this off of them, and the damage that goes with it. The problem for opponents, and what's great for you as playing this deck, is if you can get this to stick, along with keeping stones up to use Vlad's ability to drain, they lose a lot of life every turn, and eventually they just run out of life, and the game's going to be over. Really good way to get in their heads, really good way to make them waste resources and disrupt their game plan. Here's our only real resonator engine, which is the Book of Eibon. This is a field edition, and it costs 3, 2 darkness and 1 other. When this card enters your field, put target resonator from a graveyard into your field. Not your graveyard, a graveyard. So this is a great way to steal one of your opponent's resonators out of their graveyard and put them onto your field. It's a pretty good feeling to get an opponent's Gwyber and put it on your field and start swinging for 1,200 in the air on them 1 or 2 times. Again, they're going to have to deal with their own card, except this card's coming after them. And they're going to have to kill their own creatures with the additions and then the debuffs, and they're going to have to kill their own creatures on your side of the board with Book of Eibon. Really good card. Again, another frustrating card. Finally, I run 3 copies of Mount Immortal. It's a little steep price, 4 drop to cast this. It's another field edition, and pretty simple. Non-darkness resonators gain -2, -2. It's a pretty good card if you can get 1 to stick. Rarely I've gotten 2 to stick. But it's something to keep in mind when you're playing against somebody else who uses dark. This is going to be a pretty dead card. But we do have sideboard options for that. But if you go up against red, fire, when they're trying to rush through, and you can get one of these to stick, it slows them down a little bit, along with all your other debuffing cards to negate damage and get little guys off the board before they become big threats. Moving on to the sideboard, I run 4 copies of Barrier Shadows. This is going up against Regalia heavy decks. This is if you run into Reflect Refrain. This makes them pay. The Barrier Shadows is a 1-drop addition, and it just basically makes your opponent pay 1 more to J-activate and pay 1 more for Regalia activate abilities. What's nice is if you can get 2 to stick, well, they got to pay 2 more to J-activate. They got to pay 2 more to activate their Regalia. So this is a Reflect killer. Anyone who plays Reflect Refrain hates to see when these come out on the board because they can't really get counters and move as smoothly. I think the best option here is to remove Book of Eibon and put in the Barrier Shadows, especially if you play against a Reflect who has the ability to bounce resonators back to their owner's hands. If you steal anybody with Book of Eibon, Reflect's just going to bring them right back. So if you play against that, Barrier Shadows is a good option. Play 3 copies of Izinami's Curse. This is a 1-drop instant, and target resonator gains -1/-1 for each card in your graveyard until the end of the turn. This is a really good card and actually works well in this deck because we spend the majority of the game with spells and additions and really nothing that sticks too long on the board. You'll see as the game goes on, your graveyard starts filling up. So this is a really good way to blast somebody who really could hurt a Gwyber. It could hurt a pumped up Lancelot. It could hurt a Behemoth. All big resonators could get hurt by this, or softened up enough to be taken out by a bow, or a Unseen Pressure, or a Dark Purge. Again, it's a good combo. and I would take out maybe the Scorn of Dark Alice, maybe Mount Immortal. Definitely, it's situational. See how the game is going, and if there's a set of 3 you could take out, you could replace it with Izanami's Curse. Also run 3 Marybells in the sideboard. This is again, I wait to use this if I go up against another Vlad in the mirror match, or maybe a Blazer, Reflect, Refrain, Yggdrasil, the World Tree, anybody that plays a ruler that's not going to J-activate or not going to attack. There's no real need to have the Deathscythe, so this is a good replacement for it. This is a Regalia killer. You pay 1 and banish. You can pop a Regalia. In a pinch, this also can become a 1,000 Resonator. Desperate times, desperate measures, but good to have. And again, just great to have situational basis. Here is our only Resonator. It's in the sideboard, and it is Hyde the Chaos. I run 3 copies of this, and the only reason why this is in the sideboard, one reason only, guys, when you're playing against Yggdrasil, the World Tree. Now, Yggdrasil, if anybody plays that, it says that once you get them down to 0, once they would die, they actually go to 100 life. And when that happens, they get to bring out a really beefy Alice Resonator and a really tough Excalibur Regalia, which makes it very tough to get damage to your opponent to finish off the game, especially in a deck like this with no Resonators and no real ways to crack these big cards. However, Hyde gets around that simply with its enter ability. When it enters, your opponent loses 200 life. Now that gets around all the Yggdrasil protection, because if you look at those protection cards, it says that damage can't be done to the opponent. So you're not targeting the opponent, you're not dealing damage. As soon as Hyde hits the field, your opponent loses 200 life. That gets around all the protection. That is game over. And I had a good win over a Yggdrasil deck because they got all their protection out on my turn. So basically, I just used the stones and the Vlad ability to drain them down. When then they get to 0, they actually get to 100. So they bring out their Alice and they bring out their Excalibur. And I made sure I still had 2 stones open to cover the cost. Boom, Hyde comes out. Your opponent loses 200 life. Game over. And they were shocked. So really came out of nowhere. And again, this is only in the sideboard and it's only for Yggdrasil. If you're not playing a Yggdrasil deck, this never sees the light of day. Finally, 2 copies of Space-Time Collapse, just a 2-drop spell chant, so you can only play it on your turn, but it destroys target Resonator or Regalia. So just, again, you could move out a Mount Immortal, you can move out a Scorn of Dark Alice just to put these in. Again, just depending on who you're playing and what the situation is. So, guys, I hope you really liked it. That is the profile for the deck of Vlad Solo. It's a really fun deck to play. I have not really won any big tournaments yet, but I do have a couple of top 3s, so I'm happy with that. It's a really fun deck. People like to play against this deck. It's surprising at first, and they have to adjust. Sometimes they can't, and then they're just dead in the water. So I'd really like to hear what you think about it. Just comment down below. Likes are appreciated, and any subscribing, that'd be great too. I'm going to be introducing more videos and profiles and unboxings and matches I play against my friends as we go along. So thanks for a few minutes, and have a good one. Later.